Hello, Steve Arts 89. Well, I have just recently revisited Lost. Now, Lost is kind of considered now to be a classic. Some people consider it to be one of, well, it's made a few lists as one of the best television shows ever. Not sure I agree with that, but that is its sort of status at the moment. Now, I, back in the day, watched it on TV like everyone else, at least the first season, and then I kind of missed a few episodes in the second season. I think I partly lost interest, and I kind of felt like I'm missing something, I can't work this out, I'm just going to have to relegate this for DVD and I'll watch the whole season later, and I never got around to it. And then eventually, a couple of years ago, I collected up all the seasons, because there's 6 seasons. I think I had 1 and 2 for a while, and then I went out and got all the rest. I had all 6 seasons, and I was just about to sit down and spend a week quietly watching it, because I didn't want to mention to anyone that I was watching it in case someone ruined the ending for me, because I didn't know how it ended. And then I was doing some level of research in relation to it for some reason. I can't remember what, but I did a search, and some a-hole actually put the ending of the series in the title of an article. So I saw it. I didn't open it or read it, but I saw, and it spoiled the whole series for me. Now, I'm not going to spoil it for anyone in case you're watching this and haven't seen it. But then it's like, well, I lost all motivation to watch it all. And it sat in my DVD collection for a while. And I was going to throw it out, honestly. But then after my mother died, I got a bit weird with the series, because I know that she watched it, and I know she hated science, or she didn't like science fiction. So the fact that she watched Lost made me really interested in reviewing it, because I remember when it was on, her talking about it, and we were both watching it and just sort of saying, well, this happened, that happened, what is this, well, and she was sort of a little bit invested in it, and I was kind of curious why it got her when no other series like that would have gotten her. And I thought, you're going to have to watch it again. So I started watching it, and I watched the first season, and I'm about 3 episodes into the second season, and I've already lost interest in the second season. But I did want to talk about the first season, because it was interesting, because full disclosure, as a Star Trek fan, I have a level of resentment to J.J. Abrams, who I momentarily met. He seems like a nice person, but what he did with rebooting Star Trek, and then where that went with how Star Trek, the current state of Star Trek is now, he kind of inadvertently destroyed Star Trek. So I have a bit of resentment to him, and it's fascinating because some of the criticisms of him, that he is good at creating, opening a series, starting a series, sort of setting up a situation or a problem or a scene, but not actually resolving it in any way that is good. Can't think of the right term. Is sort of one of the criticisms that has been levelled with him now, because I'm not sure, and I meant to research and I forgot, I got distracted. I don't know how he became this star that he is, like TV producer star, because it happened before Lost. But yeah, Lost actually started off as a really straight TV series. It was just supposed to be the series version of Castaway, which was the Tom Hanks movie where the guy gets literally stuck on an island with a soccer ball he called Wilson. And people sort of freaked out, like, how are you going to make that into a series? But the idea was to do a plane crash and have a whole group of people lost on an island, so not just one person. It wasn't about isolation. And they were struggling to get it to work, and they said, well, why don't we go ask JJ, because apparently he's the all-knowing wizard. So they went off to see him, and he said, well, what would interest me for this, what would make this interesting for me, is if the island was a character and it had like a mystery about it. There was like a hatch or like a monster or something out in the woods, and there was something, you sort of knew that it was supernatural, and there was some sort of external threat that would combine, like, defy it, or bring the group together or something like that. But he said, but I don't have time to write it. I got to go off and he's working on a pilot and a bunch of stuff. So they went out and found Damon Lindelof, whatever his name is, and they'd never worked together before. And they met, and it was like a bromance. It was like a mind meld. They had the exact same ideas. And he said, that's exactly what I was thinking of what we could do, to have like a science fiction twist on this mysterious island that they're stuck on. So they went off and they put together a, what do you call it? Not a pitch, an outline. Not an actual script, and apparently it's one of the only TV series that's ever been sold on an outline, not an actual finished script. And yeah, they apparently went through and came up with all the ideas that they were going to spin out over the 5 or 6 years of the show, with the monster, the creature, and the hatch, and the facility and all that. But they still didn't really seem to know exactly where it was going and what it all meant. And this sort of confirms my idea of JJ being this very intuitive, instinctual, impulsive director who doesn't really plan and isn't really intellectual, doesn't really think about things, just sort of feels things and what would look good, what would be exciting, what are people going to look at and be engaged in visually or be stimulated by. And that's all he really cares about. It's like, oh, what would be cool? What would we do next that would be cool? Kind of like where they had the Enterprise under the water into darkness for absolutely no reason other than just he thought it would be cool to see the Enterprise rise out of the ocean. Stuff like that, which is what a lot of people are criticising him for. Yeah, and that's really obvious in this because, like I said, he came up with that idea. He said, hey, why don't we have some mysterious island? And that was the outline. It's a mysterious island. They find a hatch. There's a monster in the woods. And they didn't go any further than that. That was what they sold the series on. And he's very much been portrayed as like a charlatan or what is it when you scam people? There's a name for it. And I'm forgetting it. I should have had better notes. But yeah, like they didn't have, so many things weren't in place. They didn't know, when they went into production basically, with even some things, well, some things changed after production, but a lot of things weren't really finalised till a couple of weeks. They already had actors cast, they brought people in for one thing, and this does happen sometimes, but like for example, they brought in the actress for Sun, and they didn't know she was a Korean movie star, and she read for Kate originally. And they said, well, we have another idea. So they wrote the Sun character, and then they brought in the husband. It was created just for her character. So Jin came from that. And Daniel Day Kim, who I thought was a bigger star than her, but apparently wasn't, was brought in. And apparently Kate was supposed to be the hero of the series, the lead of the series, because what was going to happen was Jack, played by Matthew Fox, who they called Foxy on the set apparently, was going to die instead of the pilot in the first episode, but where they find the pilot and he gets pulled out and they find his body in a tree. That was supposed to be Jack, and then Kate would go on and lead, and they were supposed to basically set up this character for everyone to follow and trust in and believe in, and then have him be killed, and then have the series taken over by this untrustworthy person who they know was a criminal that was being transported with a guard and everything on the plane and all that. So that's kind of interesting, but they sort of realised, no, that's wrong. But apparently Matthew Fox didn't want to do a series, so how they got him to do a series when he really thought he was just doing the pilot and was going to die in the first episode, I don't know. But a lot of things were all over the place. Sawyer was originally from Boston or somewhere. He wasn't Texas or anything, but he had that accent, and JJ walked up to him after shooting had started and actually said, yeah, what are you doing? You're acting like you don't have an accent. He's like, yeah, that's the point. He's like, just let it fly. And I'm like, okay, just throw the character out. Okay. So he just did that because he thought that was cool. And just they really were, they took so many crazy risks. Like the actress Evangeline Lilly, or whatever her name is, I can't pronounce it. She was from Canada. She didn't have a visa. So they hired her when they didn't even know if she could work. The first 4 days, they had to move her down the schedule, and they had other people working the first few days because they hadn't sorted out a visa yet. Her visa, basically her visa came in 3 or 4 days into filming when they were at the end of they could only film her, and then she got it like the day before and she filmed the next day. So that's how crazy it got with some of the things, and it just shows me just how unorganized, impulsive, and just wouldn't that be cool? Let's just do this, and no thought to the long term. And like people say, he can't stick the landing. He can set up the mystery box, and this is the best example of the mystery box because he set up this mystery and people got all engaged and interested. Well, what is this island? What's in here? Nothing, because they hadn't planned anything. They had no idea what they were doing, as far as I can see. They made it all up afterwards, and that's why I'm watching it now knowing the ending, and I'm like, no, how does that work with this? And it does change how you look at the whole series, but it also makes you look at that, and I'm like, I'm hoping the person didn't put the wrong ending in that article so they didn't spoil it. But they sort of did, but they didn't. So I'm still watching it, and I'm not going to be reading any comments anyone writes in here, just in case. I don't need to know any more than what that already revealed, because it's going to take me a few days to get through it. But I don't want to watch it because once they got into the facility, and it got into the whole pressing the button in the hatch and the others, and it just became too science fiction, kind of like when Buffy went to college and they had like the army of like monster hunters and all that stuff. It was just too much, because one very wise person said you can only give your audience one thing to believe in, one concept, one suspension of disbelief that they have to, have. And once you start adding more into it, like True Blood with the vampires work, but then once they started bringing different imaginary species like werewolves and fairies and pixies and that in each season, it just got too much. Like Buffy with a lone vampire slayer in a town built on the Hellmouth is believable. You can invest in that, but then you have the army and then you have all these other things. It's too much. And Lost kind of got a bit like that. The idea of people crashing an island, not exactly knowing what it is, how to survive, that's one thing, a bit of mystery. But once you get into pure science fiction, and I guess my mother gave up on it in the second season. I can't imagine her going past the first season. But I was just really surprised that she was engaged in it. But I think that's because the mystery box is that good in that sense. It draws people in, and JJ is very good at creating that initial interest, that excitement. Like the first Star Trek film, everyone's excited about bringing this new crew together and they're going to go off, and the last movie promised we're going to go boldly and we're going to see this great new Star Trek adventure with this new cast in the next film, and they just went back to Earth. They took Kirk out of command, basically made him doubt himself again. They just repeated the same story. They never really got off Earth. There was no aliens or nothing. It was just, and that's why the third film bombed, because the second film was bad. And even though the third film tried and still didn't totally give us the sort of adventure we wanted, we ended up stuck on a planet and the Enterprise was destroyed. But you can see where that sort of thing goes. And I'm talking really, really long. I don't mean to talk this long about it, but I am talking about a whole series of a show. And there were some great moments. I mean, I love the episodes with Jin and his wife, and looking at how some of the characters work. Some of them weren't interesting, so, you sort of, okay, this is their story. Like JJ was saying, that the series really was, each character was a series, and they would have their own episodes here and there that would just be spread out over the series and that. And the only other thing I thought was funny, I just want to comment on this since I'm already over 12 minutes. Kevin Black, the FX guy, was talking in some of the special features where the polar bear was not meant to be a big feature, but then they made it a big feature because JJ thought, wouldn't that be cool? So they filmed it with this giant puppet, and in the shots it looks fine, except when you pause it and you can see it's a big giant padded, bear, stuffed bear. So because he said no CGI bear, no CGI polar bear, want to be real. So they had the effects guy running around in like polar bear pants, and then they had this giant bear being shot up in an air, this giant stuffed polar bear being shot into by an air thing. But then when they put together the trailer, some people paused it, and when you paused it, you could see it was a big stuffed bear. So they ended up replacing it with CGI for the actual episode. So I thought that was funny, because sometimes these ideas that JJ has don't always work. And also, the people who hated his shaky camera work in Star Trek, the first Star Trek film, that was all the fault of the Steadicam operator, and his name was, I wrote it down here somewhere. Basically, it's all his fault. When they were filming on the plane, this guy basically let JJ shake the film magazine. Craig Lansgard. He was a Steadicam operator, and he let JJ shake the film magazine, and that's where he got this fetish for shaky camera work, which a lot of people feel ruined Star Trek. That and the because he was doing that before Star Trek, but Star Trek, he also brought in the lens flares, which a lot of people hate, because he feels like it just brings this sort of element to it, and it's all about the sensation and making people sort of look at the film and get excited visually, but not actually think. And a lot of times there isn't any logical story behind these things. It's just, wouldn't that be cool? Won't that engage people? People will be dazzled by that, so just do that. And it's very, very flim-flam. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment. Let me know what you think. I'm sorry this went so long. It's a 15-minute, basically, TV series review. But it was meant to be shorter. But it is interesting. I am going to watch the rest of the series. I'm not looking forward to it because I think it's going to... I remember tuning in a few episodes here and there just to see where the show was at into the third and fourth series and thinking, wow, this is just... Whatever they had in the first season, they have lost. kind of like the original Twin Peaks, where there was an initial sort of excitement about this one element of the story. And once you got outside of that, a lot of people lost interest because they just saw it as that. A lot of people just saw this series as about a plane crash, people surviving on this island, and this some sort of mystery. But once you got into the actual science fiction of it, the suspension of disbelief was too much for a lot of people. Now, they still had 11 million people when the show ended, I think, but it started off with 16 million. So they held on to a few. I'm surprised it rated as well as it did in the last year. So I was having a look at that. But yeah, I'm going to go, and I will probably do a series review on the rest of the series. I can't imagine I'm going to do a season by season thing. Who's going to watch that? But I'm going to go. Thanks. Bye.